All right, I'm gonna record this one. I had a little bit of a camera disaster in the last one. So trimming bowls. The reason why we want to trim bowls, there's a couple different reasons. One is usually when you throw a bowl, you're probably going to leave a little bit of extra clay in the bottom. You want to get rid of that weight. In doing so, what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to make the inside shape or the outside shape match the inside shape. So hopefully when you're making your bowl, you're looking at just at that inside shape and making that be the shape that you want. And then I kind of ignore the outside shape, and then when I flip it over to trim it, that's when I deal with the outside. But it kind of finishes the foot. It makes it look nice. You don't just have to trim it. You don't. Bowls aren't the only things that you can trim. Like you could trim your cups too if you felt like you needed to get rid of a little bit of clay. But the one thing that you need to pay attention to is you need to make sure that the top is really flat, and that the top and the bottom, so what's touching the wheel and what you're going to be trimming, that they're parallel to each other. They're on the same plane. If the rim is all wonky, it makes it really difficult. But yeah, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a nice even thickness through the whole thing. Okay. I'm not going to show you how to tap center. I'll just show you tap centering really quick. This is the fast way to center a piece. When you figure out how to do that, I might make a video on how to do that. It's a rhythm thing. That's the fast way to do it, but it's the most difficult way to learn how to center. Okay, the easiest way to learn how to center, is you're just going to take a tool with some sort of point on it. Don't use a needle tool because it makes too much of a gouge. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to make sure that my arms are super stable. Okay, and I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to allow it to draw a circle on the bottom of the piece. Okay? This circle is the center of the wheel, and what I need to do is I need to push this clay into the center of the wheel. What I've found, when I used to teach this, I would say, look at this gap here and do half of that gap. And then you push it, and then you do it again, and it's like, okay, half of the gap, and you push it, and then half of the gap, and then you push it, and then half the gap, and you push it. Imagine everybody at this point has probably taken math up to a certain point at the graph of 1 over x. The line that never actually touches like any of the axes. That's kind of like pushing it halfway here. So what you actually want to do is you want to push it the full way. I'm going to make sure that the gap, the widest part of the gap, is right in front of me. The place where it touches the edge is right there. I put my hands on the wheel, and I'm just going to use my thumbs. I'm going to look at a spot on the wheel that's the same distance as this gap. I'm going to push it to that spot. Okay. Notice I'm not using these. Okay. These rings, they'll give you sort of a sense of like when it's sort of close to the middle, but they're not going to give you a sense of like if it's actually centered, because what'll end up happening is when you're throwing it, this and this might not be concentric, right? So you might need to still center it. Okay, so now when I draw a line on there, it's pretty much all the way around. I could probably trim this and be fine. I'm pretty particular about my pieces being centered, so what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to do a last little finishing touch here. I'm just going to allow it to kind of touch the tool. I'm going to find out where it touches here. Okay, that's the spot where it touches. I'm just going to push it just a little bit, just to kind of fine tune it. Okay, so it touches from about here to here. Okay, and then one more little push here. So moving it just a couple millimeters at a time here. It's pretty close. It touches most of the way around, I think. I might just push it one more time. Just a slight bit. Okay, so now it touches all the way, pretty much all the way around the foot. So that's where I want it to be. Okay, that's nice and centered. If it's not centered, what you'll end up doing is you'll trim through You'll have one thick side and you might trim to the other. So you want to make sure that it's good and centered. Okay, now that it's centered, I need to make sure it stays in place. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a piece of clay. I can roll it into a coil really quickly. I'm going to pick off 4 pieces of clay. I'm going to hold the pot down to the wheel. And I'm going to put the thing next to it, and I'm going to push straight down. Okay? Okay, notice I'm not pushing it into the side. If you push it into the side, you might scoot it over. Worst case scenario, you could actually crack the lip. You don't want to do that. Hold the pot down, put it next to the lip, and push it down. Okay, the clay will squish enough into the pot. You don't need to press it into the pot. You just let the clay squish into the pot. Okay, so this is a Snapple cap or a trim-in lid. I have a thing of trim-in lids over there. Place that on the top. So this basically is going to be a friction-free surface and a harder surface that you can press on, so that it'll hold your piece down. So you need to press it down hard enough to make the Snapple cap pop down. If you're not pressing it down hard enough to make the Snapple cap pop down, the piece is probably going to come off of the wheel while you're trimming it and start spinning around and do a lot of damage to your piece. So make sure that when you're using this, you press it down. I'm going to get it in the middle here. Okay. Before you trim it, one thing I forgot to mention: look at that inside curve. Okay, look at it. Pay attention to it. Because you're going to need to sort of remember what this inside looks like before you start trimming it. So right now I have it centered. I've spent all that time centering it. I don't want to have to take it off, look at the inside, and put it back down. So just try to remember what that looks like before you start trimming. Okay, trimming tools. We have a bunch of different types of loop tools over in the thing. This seems to be the most popular when you're first starting out. It's the little tool. It doesn't take off as much clay. It's a little easier to keep under control. You can use this one if you want to. These ones aren't very sharp, this one right here, but I like it because it has this little point, and I use that for something that you'll see in just a second. I do most of my trimming with a large tool, just because I'm used to how tight I need to hold on to this thing, and I like how much clay it removes at once. So as you get better at trimming, you can use the big tool for just about everything. Okay, trimming angle matters. Okay, this is 3 o'clock. When you trim like this, it's acting like a snow plow. Okay, when you trim at 4:30-ish, like 4:30, 5 o'clock, it's encountering it at trimming, like a cutting angle. So it's actually acting to remove the clay like something shaving. Okay, like a shaving, like a razor or something like that. So it's going to cut the clay off a lot nicer. See how I can trim it off in really nice little kind of ribbons? Okay, over here it will do a ribbon, but it'll start to chatter. Okay, what you need to do to trim is you need to hold the piece down with your left hand. Okay, the middle finger of your left hand, just kind of allow it to squish that little button down. You're going to connect your hands just like when you're throwing. Okay, so I have the left thumb on the trimming tool, and then I'm going to hold on to the trimming tool really tight with my right hand. Okay, I'm going to use the round part to take some bulk off of this, and this piece is maybe a little drier than it should be, but the idea is to get this really nice ribbon of clay to come off of there. Okay, I'm going to take the bulk off first. Now what I'm actually going to trim to is, I don't know if you can see it in here, but there's a place where the light kind of changes in there, and that's kind of where I trim the outside of the foot to. It's kind of like where I opened up the clay to. It's like right where that angle kind of changes and it sort of flattens out a little bit on the inside, right about there. If you flip this over, that's right where the outside of the foot is. And if you put the outside of the foot right where that sort of transition happens, your pieces will be a lot more even. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. Hopefully I get it to the same width here. So I'm going to take the bulk off to that width. Then I'm going to switch to this pointy end, and I'm going to go straight down and create the outside of the foot. Okay? Then I'm gonna hold the angle. So again, I don't want to hold it at a really flat angle. I want to kind of hold it at a high angle so it shaves the clay off. And I'm just gonna move the tool down the side. And remove that clay. And I'm just shaping right now. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a bevel. So this bevel right here, so that's when you, if you set it down and you have like a sharp edge there, if you don't have this bevel and you have a really sharp edge, when you set it down on the table, each time you set it down, you'll chip a little bit of the foot off. Maybe not each time, but quite often. So I give the foot a little bit of a bevel, and then I'm gonna give it a little bit of an undercut with this little tool. That's about all I use this tool for, is to give it the undercut. Okay. Maybe give it kind of a quick trim like that, just to kind of sort of facet the outside. Okay, so now for the middle. If you want to use this tool, you can. You can use the round tool to kind of remove the bulk. Make sure that you're holding your tool at a high angle like this, so it's kind of a cutting angle, okay? Not flat like that. Again, I still prefer the large tool, even though it's like a lot of times almost as big or bigger than the interior of the foot. Now the inside shape on that one, it's curved like this, so I want this to follow that same curve. So I'm actually going to dive down with that part first, okay? So I'm holding onto the tool, and see I'm almost just holding onto the blade end, okay? I'm barely even holding onto the handle. And then I'm pressing down right next to it. Ooh, sometimes it'll catch a little bit. You just have to make sure that you're holding onto the tool really tight. This is not a very sharp trimming tool. So if you trim your pieces when they're really dry, they dull out the trimming tools. I think I sharpened all of these last semester, beginning of last semester. Okay, I'm constantly going a little bit more in there. Now, one way to look at it is like this whole interior thing is curved. So I want the exterior to be curved too. So this kind of domes up, and then I want to sort of imagine it sort of reappearing on the other side of the foot. Like, so if I were to trim the foot off, it would follow through in a continuous curve. Okay, so now I'm just going to do a little detail on my foot. Just going to round it off. I think I can take a little bit more clay out. You'll notice I always tap my pieces when I'm trimming them. This is a really dull tool, because you can actually hear the thickness. That sounds good. Like, it'll sound kind of hollow when you tap on it. The more you do, the more you'll understand what that sound is. If you don't use the lid, it'll make a funny noise when you press down on the top. Okay, and then last thing I do, you don't need to do this, and I actually recommend that you probably don't do this. Okay, just take a little chunk out. I don't think I'm going to be able to stamp these. They're a little too hard. But ideally, oh, I left a little bit of stuff in the groove there. Ideally, you want the inside shape to match the outside shape. Okay, I can pass this around. Let's see. Did I make it the same size as that one? Yeah, pretty close. Okay, so you can feel like the balance. This one's pretty much exactly the same, so I'll just pass that way. So, yeah, nice and even. That's the goal.